Welcome to another edition of the Marketer's Brief Podcast, our weekly discussion about marketing news and trends that have the industry buzzing. I'm your host, Garrett Sloan, Chief Technology Reporter at Ad Age, and today's guest is Avery Akkineni, Chief Marketing Officer at VaynerX. Avery is the CMO who knows the business of CMOs, working with VaynerX and brands on today's biggest marketing challenges, including how to win over the internet. Today, we talk about the changing role of the chief marketer and how they have to be always online and social media ready. Brands are facing too many challenges to ignore that battle space. We also talk about how VaynerMedia views AI and how it's reshaping the industry and why the agency has taken an interesting stance on that technology. And you'll want to hear Avery's advice on the 3 channels CMOs are sleeping on right now. Avery, hi, good to see you today.
So lovely to see you. Thank you for having me on today's podcast.
Yeah, and good to hear from you for all those listeners out there. So we brought you in today because we want to talk about your role at VaynerX, where you are the CMO, and we're talking about changing and evolving roles of the Chief Marketing Officer in today's crazy landscape. So you know all about it from your vantage point as CMO and working with CMOs. So I just want to get your perspective on, I guess we could start with social media, an expertise of VaynerX and yourself. So we're looking at 2026. I wanted to hear, where should CMOs be paying attention online, on social media, and how that space should be viewed?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Garrett, we at Vayner have been at this for 16 years now. We started as a community management agency, really. And over that last decade and a half, we've grown from that small little conference room with Gary and 3 people to 2,500 people across 18 different offices in 15 different countries, which is really exciting. And social media has always really been at the core of what we do, starting with that community management aspect, expanding into what social looked like at the time, which was follower growth and fans, and for those who remember that era. And it's just continued to grow in importance, not only in the United States, but across the world. It's gone from being what I would call like a side piece that sort of comes after the main campaign and the big idea, to being such a critical driver of relevance, of communication, of always on community building for brands. And I think as we go into 2026, there's never been a more important time for social media for today's CMOs. I think that's one of the reasons that this has probably been our best year ever as Vayner, is people are really waking up to just how important social media is in 2025, 2026. That's not to say that that won't change over time. Of course, there's always new technology and there's always new things that pop up, but we know that social media changes the outcome of things like elections and perspectives on all different types of important topics. But for a long time, it wasn't the number one priority, or it wasn't even a top priority for many chief marketing officers. And I think that we've really felt at Vayner, the last year has been a turning point where people are like, this is actually incredibly important for us to get right. And that, more traditional mindset of thinking sort of paid first, then owned, then earned, has really flipped into this owned first, starting with social, then earned, and then paid mindset. So it's a very exciting time to be working at VaynerMedia, actually.
Yeah, I see Vayner, and you always do this. This is how you've always worked, but it's catching on a little more. And just we see the process with some brands where they'll launch something on social. We've seen you do that during Super Bowl campaigns. You'll float things on social, creative ideas, creative brand mascots, and
Yep.
then get those out onto either TikTok or Instagram, and then that'll build, and then it'll be a campaign, or that's the way you do it, and you do it for almost every brand. So there's always interesting cases of it. Are there any that you've just seen? You're always talking about million view hits, I think I read recently.
Yeah.
Of course, you want million views on all your social media. Are there any that just pop to mind where you're like, oh, that was a good one recently? Like we did our job there.
Yeah, it's funny because the team was just showing me yesterday that we've actually had almost 500 million view hits organically, by the way. This is not with paid amplification. across our portfolio this year to date, which is so amazing. So it honestly happens all the time. But let me give an example of a brand that certainly never has any paid budget. And, we're always trying to crack that code. And that's actually our own handle as VaynerMedia. So for clients, you could argue, hey, everyone knows about Pepsi, everybody knows about Chase, everybody knows about Budweiser and some of these other handles where, we're repeatedly delivering this type of organic success. But VaynerMedia is an account that hardly goes viral because it's very B2B oriented. And I'm really proud of my team and that we're now getting organically million view hits, I would say at least on a bi-weekly basis, talking about advertising topics and marketing topics, which, as you know, because you're in this industry as well, is not a wide industry. There are not many millions of people who are even familiar with the advertising industry. So we had one, I'm going to check how many it got. We had one recently because I always challenge my team. We can't just do things that go viral for no purpose that really leads to anything for Vayner. Of course, we can film Gary saying the F word, but how does that help grow our business? So we had Take Your Kids to Work Day a couple weeks ago. Okay, this is crazy. And the question is, what do your parents do for work? And we asked the kids who came in 14.3 million views organically on that piece of content. And if you look at the piece of content, it really kind of communicates what we're trying to communicate as what VaynerMedia does. We asked someone their mom is a strategist, their dad is a media analyst, their mom is a VP of client partnerships, of strategy, production, whatever. That is such a fun example to me of something that we're trying to communicate what we do as an advertising agency to a lot of people. How do you make it interesting and how do you make it relevant for social? Clearly, we did the job there.
Yeah, and LinkedIn, is that LinkedIn or where was it? Is that Instagram?
That was actually Instagram. We get million view hits on LinkedIn all the time, Garrett. So
Sure, that's
yeah,
easy.
we need to take that up a notch. And I think what works for us on LinkedIn is we'll try to link it to our events and experiences. It's like Vayner's at CES, Vayner's at Cannes, Vayner's at the ANAs. And we love to showcase our clients on our LinkedIn. Jason Acker from Diageo he had one that was 5 million views on LinkedIn on the Vayner channel. So shout out to Jason, but we love having our clients, John Halverson from Mondelez recently, Sandeep Seth from Tapestry.
And John Halverson recently moved to Kenview, I believe. So just
I
to
believe he
update.
starts next week, actually. Yep, as a chief marketing officer.
But hey, at Mondelez, you put him on social, all these clients, and seeing the success here.
Yes, exactly. And we ask them, of course, things about our work together and about our brand building efforts and what we're working on with their teams. But in a lot of ways, it's also testimonial.
Yeah, this is how you do it. Are there any tips of that is a brilliant idea. Kids answering funny questions. It's almost a can't miss. But are there
Exactly.
other I think every CMO obviously is struggling with that. They want to go online and post something, and if just like any user, if it's not gaining traction, you stop.
That's exactly right. And by the way, there's never been a bigger interest in CMOs and building their personal brands, not for their own personal benefit, but really because it helps them and their companies land key messages. We see this with executives with sharing earnings reports. If you just put this copy paste message that your comms team sent you on LinkedIn about, I'm so proud of our Q3 earnings and blah, 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 and it's not specific and personal and relevant and relatable, then no one's going to see it because it's not a good piece of content and it's not interesting to people. But if you make it interesting and you weave in your personal voice and you add a little bit of context and you deliver it in a way that people are actually consuming on the platform, it'll crush. So that's something that we're constantly working on with our partners. We actually have a team at Vayner that helps with what we call executive social, which is really formatting key messages to be personalized and relevant. And we constantly compare those. It's okay, this was the one you wanted to post. Here's the one that we helped you with. And they're look at these differences because as you well know, Garrett, the being fit for format is critical.
And I want to think about which sort of, first of all, I would love to do a story on brands and their CMOs and how they launch themselves onto social media. If there are any breakout stars.
There's so many breakout stars, and I'll give several who stand out to me. One that is a Vayner client, but we don't help with his social, who's absolutely killing it, is Nick Tran, who's the president of a Diageo joint venture company that owns Ciroc and Los Lobos Tequila. Nick's LinkedIn is amazing, and he's always giving his perspective as a marketing leader on different advertising campaigns. I love that one, and on the more sort of Fortune 500 side, I think Carla Hassan is very strong there in her posts and the delivery. Frank Cooper from Visa, which is one that we get to work on a bit, same thing.
I would love to. I'll check them all out. Nick Tran, I have seen he rose to prominence with Taco Bell, I think, in a big social media thing, it's very Vayner Media what he had done. I think a blackout or some other. I will have to go back to the Taco Bell example to remember the details. The other thing about social, just as we're talking about, I'm thinking about it. Before I got on our podcast, I was thinking, oh, let me just see what Avery's done lately. Obviously, a little research and then inevitably leads to some generative AI deep dive. And just seeing where it's sourcing from Instagram, from LinkedIn. These posts that you're posting are what's informing AI. And I think that's something that CMOs probably need to be very cognizant of. And you probably know that better than anyone.
I'm so glad that you said that. That is absolutely our belief in where things are heading at Vayner. And I'm glad that you noticed this as a user yourself, because a lot of times people are trying to game these large language models with like various like blog posts and spam and like dark arts SEO. And truly, that is not effective going into this next year. What is effective is creating a very high volume of content that then, of course, it's only picking up the Instagrams and the LinkedIns that do well, that are relevant, that, get that consumption. But that's a huge belief of ours at Vayner across the 7 social platforms that matter, posting as much as you can. Of course, also working with credible PR sources like Ad Age and, many other leading publications matters as well. But it's like it's like you need that credibility from legitimate publishers, and you need your own content, and you need a lot of it if you want to be able to influence these engines and what they're putting out.
And on the AI front, you've been doing it, building it slowly over the last 2, 3 years since it blew into the mainstream. There's no Vayner AI. We haven't seen that segment of your business. I think it's just seeping in places and you're owning it in new ways. How did you build this into the practice?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have always viewed this as more of an enabler than a differentiator. And I think many people expected us to launch a Vayner AI, as we have with other kind of key topics of over the years. But credit to Gary. Gary was like, this is not something that's separate and it's not a side thing. This needs to be absolutely embedded in the way that we work as a company, full stop. This isn't something for a special group of people to work on. It's something for everyone to know. And is really a requirement to work at Vayner and to be successful. His great quote is, not using AI is like riding a horse to work, like you will be left behind, so use it. And of course, we worked with our partners on the Google side. We were like pilot users of a lot of their Gemini products for enterprises. We just did a case study with them actually. So that's super embedded in what we do. And I think if this were a year or two ago, there was a lot of almost pressure from clients and internally for us to sign a deal with some point solution and, say we're doing something in the world of AI. And our take was that we were going to partner with the companies that we view as really embedded in our process fully. And for us, that's Google, because we use Workspace and we're such a big investor there from an advertising perspective and their client and, all the things. And we're really happy with that, because I think instead of us making a big announcement and to do about, partnering with some point solution, we decided to kind of see how it has panned out. And it's funny because we're right at the advent of Gemini 3, which is anticipated to be a really breakthrough model. So I think we're staying the course. We're seeing this as just integrated in what every single person at Vayner does versus a standalone. And I think it's actually working out.
Yeah, and I'm just hearing it and thinking about it. Yeah, every other independent agency, media holding company, they have some platform that didn't slap. They developed and invested a lot and have made
They
great
slap.
products.
It's fine. We can say it.
You can say it, put AI on it, and that's their model. You at some point there must have been oh, do we have some grand product? Is this changing the way? Of course, it changes everything, but so yeah,
Yeah. And I think a lot of clients were asking us that of like, why don't you have this deal with Runway or Pika Labs or whatever? And we're like, by the way, we can use every platform. We already do. And we have been working on like AI since Midjourney came out. We've had scopes with clients that are specifically dedicated to exploration and implementation of generative AI in marketing. So this has been already more than 3 years. But we didn't kind of like triple down on an exclusive point solution for the same reason that Vayner didn't triple down on our exclusive data solution. We really believe in working with the best partners and not trying to package up some BS that our clients need to pay more for that doesn't deliver any real tangible results. There is no better AI than that of the top 7 social platforms in determining relevance. So the closer we can work with them to make sure we are in lockstep with leveraging all of their tools, the better from our perspective.
I would love to talk more about that. If we had hours, I could ask about the automation going on and everything else happening in this industry. And it is just fascinating. I have to ask about Super Bowl. I mean,
Yes.
you always have some brand in it. Have we announced any brands that you're with? And if not, then maybe generally, what's the big surprise I should give hints to?
We do have some Super Bowl spots this year, one that we just signed the talent for this week that we're super excited about. It's actually a brand that we have not ever done Super Bowl work with before. I'm not going to drop the name here because the team would murder me, but I'm really excited about it. And this is going to be our first big work with this client. We've been working together for about 2 years, so we're pumped about that. There'll probably be some other Vayner favorites that you've seen over the years too. And for us, Super Bowl is a critical moment, like the most underpriced buy in advertising, but the variables, of course, like the creative. We're huge believers in it. But I think unlike maybe a few years ago, it's like doing those Super Bowl style, like big ads is not our core focus. Because I think there was a while where we were really trying to prove that we can compete with the traditional creative agencies. I think we've checked that box. And if a Super Bowl ad makes sense for a client, then we're going to do it. But also, there's a Super Bowl every damn day on Instagram and TikTok. And if it makes more sense for us to win those days, then that's where we're focusing our effort and attentions and budgets. So that's kind of our perspective going into this year. But we will be in San Francisco. We'll be doing a bunch of fun stuff with clients, with on the ground activations, with all of that. I'm sure there will be another like 20 clients that we're supporting this Super Bowl season in some capacity, including with our surround sound product for those brands who are wanting to maximize their Super Bowl impact beyond just the spot, which is funny because a lot of clients actually come to us specifically for that.
Also, we'll be talking about you're always talking about underpriced attention, and we started the conversation about social media and where it's going in 2026.
Mhm.
What are we sleeping on in 2026?
I'm going to say 3 key things that I think brands are sleeping on. They're still sleeping on social. There are still some of the biggest brands in the world who are putting 1% of their budget towards organic social media, which is crazy because they know that it changes consumer perception and they know that it can have all of these outsized impacts. But big brands are actually still sleeping on social media. Second, retailers, I think, are sleeping on the world of live shopping. This is something that we have seen just drive tremendous results for so many of our retail brands in the supplement space, in the cosmetic space, in the fashion space. So live shopping, a big thing. We just hosted a live shopping summit actually in New York a couple weeks ago, and it was just packed with marketing leaders who were like, tell me about this. So that's one. And then the last thing I'm going to say is events. I think events and experiences have just in the post-COVID world have really become more and more important. And Vayner and Ad have hosted a couple of things together that have been great, but people are really craving that in-person connection, that, friend building because they're not in the office together every day at many companies. They're missing a little bit of that camaraderie. So I think events as a concept to make those connections and then also as a vehicle for content creation is such an incredible opportunity for brands. Whether you're doing influencer trips, throwback to influencer trips, they are back. You're doing special dinners, you're doing different community pop-ups that you do as a way to get people together, but then also as a content creation, like really campaign. I think that is being slept on. So social, live shopping, events.
And speaking of events, Cannes will be coming up faster than we probably know it. I'll CES before that, but looking just forward, do you have any special plans for those major events next year?
Yes. Shea Vayner, which was our can concept for 2025, has gone around the world. We just did one in Singapore. We will be bringing that back to Cannes at the same cafe as last year. So we are thrilled about that. We thought that that was really fun and a nice sort of Vayner way to bring something to life. CES, we will actually be also doing a takeover at a restaurant. So any listeners to this, I hope you all can join us for those 2 things. The one in CES will be called Viva Las VaynerX. So you can't miss it. Toca Madera, January 7th. So we'll be showing up at both of those places.
All right, look for VaynerX at CS and Can. Thank you, Avery, for joining me. I think we did a podcast, so I really appreciate you joining me.
We did a podcast. Thank you so much for having me, Garrett.
That was Avery Akkineni, Chief Marketing Officer at VaynerX, and I'm Garrett Sloan, Chief Technology Reporter at AdAge. And that was a Marketer's Brief podcast. Thank you to the producer, Lauren Chiario, and I invite you all to subscribe to the Marketer's Brief podcast on your favorite player. We promise to keep it brief, short enough for your morning coffee. Thanks for streaming with us.
Marketer's Brief listeners get $40 off an adage.com subscription. Sharpen your marketing edge and visit adage.com/brief for your discount.